Hello, everyone. Give me one sec. Just waiting to go live on Instagram. Okay. There we go. And hello. Can we pin this comment? Yes. Amazing. Hello, everyone. Welcome. I am absolutely thrilled to be here with you tonight. This is the first official You Do You event. I'm going to make the chat bigger since my eyes do not read quite so well from this far away. Hi, Zoe. Hi, Samantha. Hi, guys. Okay, so first things first, you are able to pre-order signed copies throughout this live tonight. If you are watching on TalkShopLive, you can just click the shop button. If you happen to be joining us from Instagram or Facebook, you can comment shop and it will send you the links to pre-order signed copies. And if you happen to be watching on YouTube, you can click the link in the description. So without further ado, let's talk a little bit about You Do You. I am truly devastated that I do not have a book to hold up and show you right now. Unfortunately, the book is not coming out for a couple months, but hopefully I will have copies soon. In the meantime, I'm hoping that you will indulge me by looking at a couple pictures I have for you, but also you should be able to see the cover in TalkShop as well. So the full title of my latest cookbook is You Do You 100 Plus Endlessly Adaptable Recipes to Boost Your Culinary Confidence. And it is exactly what it sounds like. It is a cookbook of recipes that are designed to be flexible, to please every palate, to work with every pantry. My goal with this book, ironically, is to help you go off book more often, to have recipes that you can look at and then be like, oh, I can tweak this based on what's in my fridge and pantry. Also, in case you get very nervous making substitutions, which I absolutely understand, underneath every single recipe in the book is a You Do You section, and there will be a list of substitution options. So, for example, if a recipe calls for carrots, it will tell you that you can substitute, in this case, snap peas, bell pepper, sweet peas, etc. And my hope is that as you read through tons of these You Do You sections, you will start to understand the role that certain ingredients are playing. What are they adding in terms of their specific flavor? Are they adding a certain important texture like crunch or creaminess? And once you sort of understand that, you are able to cook on the fly with confidence. So the goal here is always to be boosting your culinary confidence. Whitney said, why do you think so many people are afraid to deviate from recipes? I think that when you are a new cook, making a substitution in a recipe is possibly the most terrifying thing that you could ever do, just in the sense that, like, what if you don't know if something is playing a key role and you're like, what if I swap that out and then I've wasted my time, money, and I can't even eat a delicious meal. And so I think giving people ideas to be like, okay, it's safe for me to try this. And again, the more you do it, the more comfortable you get, is game changing. And this book was really inspired by teaching my virtual cooking classes. So I started teaching cooking classes back in the spring of 2020. Was a time. I really thought that I was just going to be teaching these classes for, a couple weeks to be keeping people entertained. And what ended up happening is I am still teaching these classes weekly, almost, well, 6 years later. And the thing that I noticed is that people were truly panicking live. Like, if there's one thing that can make a bunch of capable adults panic in front of their peers on Zoom, it's missing one ingredient in a recipe, truly. And I know this is not necessarily relatable if you are a very seasoned home cook, but again, for new cooks, it is very scary. And that is why I started including a You Do You section underneath all of the recipes in my cooking classes and the recipes that I share on my website and on social media. And this book, my hope is really helps people get over that fear. Somebody asked, are we going to be cooking from the book? And the answer is yes. We are actually going to dive into that momentarily. If you have just joined, just a reminder that you can order signed copies throughout this live. If you're on TalkShop, you can click the shop button. If you're on Facebook or Instagram, comment shop to have the link sent directly to you. Or if you're on YouTube, you can click the link in the description. I'm just looking at a couple questions here. Somebody said, Amelia said, were there any recipes that were surprisingly difficult to make flexible? Yes, and those did not make it into the book. So you'll notice once we start cooking, I'm going to walk you through the different chapters in the book. Things like baking are very precise. You can't just be swapping out ingredients and like expecting the same result. If you've ever read the New York Times cooking comments, they're deeply hilarious. It's like somebody baking a cake and being like, well, I swapped the eggs for strawberry yogurt and used cooked oatmeal in place of flour, and it was disgusting. Like, you can't just be making substitutions willy-nilly in every type of recipe. But I designed every recipe in this book to be particularly flexible so that it could be used as a true roadmap. Unfortunately, some recipes just do not have the same flexibility as others. Somebody said, what's your favorite panic substitution that actually turned out better than the original? I will think on that, Aubrey, and I will get back to you at the end of class. Ashley says, I remember being so frustrated with the cleanup of something like a Blue Apron back in the day. Are most of the recipes minimal cleanup, or is it also a you do you where there will be options? Okay, great question, Ashley. Some people will be disappointed by this, but this is not a quick and easy cookbook. There are a ton of quick recipes in the book with minimal cleanup. And those have a stamp that says quick fix. You can easily identify them when you're flipping through or easily find them in the index. The chapters, I'm gonna start preheating my pan here because we're gonna cook one of my favorite recipes from the one pot chapter, which was specifically designed so that you do not have a ton of cleanup to do after cooking, because we all know there are certain nights that we just like cannot do that. We have a breakfast chapter, which there is a mix of everyday, very quick, and then also prep ahead recipes. There's also a few like more weekend breakfast brunchy options that are slightly more time consuming and may make a tiny bit more of a mess. We also have crowd pleasing comfort food for more dude dieters. This is for you. There are some very indulgent recipes, but it is really in keeping with my cooking style, which is healthier comfort food. There's a chili con carne quinoa bake in there. There's a chicken apple cheddar melt that I love. There's an incredible tomatillo beef stew. So there are also some recipes that are more time consuming but involve minimal prep. So it's something like a beef stew that is going to require several hours of simmer time, but not a ton of hands-on time. There is also a one-pan wonder section. We, this evening, are going to be making a one-pot white bolognese, which is one of my favorite recipes in the book, but also really encapsulates the you do you philosophy. All kinds of one pan meals in there, not just soup, stews, and chilies. There's like an incredible, there are soup, stews, and chilies, but there are also lots of skillet meals, an incredible summer vegetable quesadilla with pesto, all things though where you truly only need one pan. Then we have signature salads, which is very near and dear to my heart because I love like a big loaded salad, and every salad in that chapter has a foolproof protein in the salad. So you'll learn how to perfectly sear a piece of salmon, how to flawlessly cook a steak on your stovetop. There is a great method, not idiot proof chicken, but for pan searing chicken breasts, making crispy tofu crumbles, cooking a jammy egg, and all these proteins are things that you can mix and match in different recipes throughout the book. Then, as I mentioned, there are some recipes that are a little bit more time consuming, a little bit fancier. There's a feeling fancy chapter for when you are in the mood for that, when you are looking for something fancy for a date night or to have a little dinner party, something like that. Everything from like a perfect filet mignon with pan sauce. And every recipe is also, in addition to being flexible, meant to incorporate a foundational technique. So something like making a pan sauce or, cooking the perfect proteins that I mentioned. how to cook fish in parchment or braise chicken, all of these fun techniques that once you know how to do them, if you're looking in your fridge and you're like, I've got these things, like, oh, I can, put all of these things in a parchment package with a piece of fish and have a meal on the table in 20 minutes. Or I can braise this chicken with this sauce and these vegetables and know that it's going to come out incredibly tender and have, magical flavors in there because you have that confidence. Then we have show-stopping sides, mix and match options by season. And then there is a happy hour chapter in this book. So there are lots of appetizer options and as well as cocktails/mocktails. Every cocktail has the ingredients for one and the ingredients for a batch cocktail if you want to have a party. And last but not least, there is a short chapter called Something Sweet that is just like 6 foolproof dessert recipes, again, that are flexible, that are in my personal arsenal as somebody who doesn't love to bake. These are just like my go-tos. There's a chocolate olive oil torte. There is a cherry berry crisp, a great panna cotta, some tahini Rice Krispie treats. And again, all of those are roadmaps. You can make the crisp with any fruit. The chocolate olive oil torte can have a little like lemon zest added to it. You can use coconut oil instead of olive oil if you don't want that little bit of savory flavor, etc. So everything is truly flexible. All right, people, I'm just making sure that I don't skip all these questions. Charlie says, if someone only learns one improvisation skill from this book, what do you hope it is? Honestly, that is such a good question. I would say probably it's more than one, but I hope that they're able to master 3 foolproof proteins, because I feel like if you have 3 foolproof proteins in your back pocket, you can make a meal any night of the week. Like whatever veggies you have, whatever grains you have, things like that. I find that people tend to struggle the most with proteins. Joseph says, any recipes that didn't make the book that you wish did? Ooh, that's such a tough one. There definitely are, but I think I was so scarred by the failures, and there's a strong reason that like everything that didn't make it into the book didn't. So I can't think of something that I really, really loved and like was devastated didn't make it into the book. All right. Let's start by doing some cooking and then we'll dive back into some questions. Again, if you're just joining, welcome, welcome. We are doing some cooking from You Do You. We are going to make, again, because I don't have the book, we are making one pot white bolognese. If there are any true Italians in this chat, I'm sure that you are absolutely losing your mind over a one-pot pasta. I know that some people are very anti the one-pot pasta, but I'm somebody that if it doesn't sacrifice flavor or texture, like why would we not want to cook everything together? So all we need to start off here, I did a little bit of prep in advance. We're going to start by heating some olive oil here. Just a couple tablespoons of olive oil. And then we're going to add some vegetables. So I have very finely chopped carrot, celery, and onion. These are going to cook down until they're very nice and soft. So we'll give these probably about like 6-ish minutes here just to get really nice and tender. They're not going to brown too much, but a little bit of browning is okay. That caramelization will add great flavor. We are going to let these cook down before we add our seasonings. We're not going to add any salt right now. We're going to wait until we add ground turkey. What is great about this bolognese, though, if you've never had white bolognese, it's a little bit lighter and has like a very light cream sauce versus the tomato-based sauce that we may be used to. Again, because this cooks in one pot, this is a great weeknight meal, but this is also something that is very much elevated enough to serve to guests if you wanted to serve it at a dinner party. I'm going to use turkey this evening. However, you could make this with ground beef, lamb, chicken, obviously, any type of plant-based ground meat alternative. All of these are listed out for you in the You Do You section, which you will not be able to read because that is teeny tiny print. But again, that's a long section you can see. So any type of meat. And then if you wanted to leave out meat, maybe use like a can of white beans, that would be really delicious as well, albeit not traditional, but nothing about this is traditional. Let's look at some of these questions while we're sauteing this. Kayla says, which little lesson to live by has changed your own cooking the most? It's a great question. So for those, that obviously came from reading the description of the book, but there is a section at the start of the book that is little lessons to live by. And they're just quickie tips that I either learned in culinary school or have just been practicing over the years that have really made a huge difference in my own cooking. I think one of the biggest ones, it's incredibly simple, and a lot of you may have learned it from Rachel Ray many years ago, but like cooking with a trash bowl or a compost bowl, just a big bowl that sits at the head of your cutting board, and you're throwing scraps into it as you're cooking versus doing trips back and forth to the trash or compost multiple times during a cooking session. If you are a human tornado in the kitchen like me, it is wildly helpful for staying organized. So I really think that one is huge. I also think that cooking with stainless steel, preheating your stainless steel pans until water beads on the surface and dances around, game changer. A lot of people are afraid of cooking with stainless steel. It's such a fantastic material. If things are scorching and staining, it is likely because your pan was not preheated enough, and or the scorching really comes from using too high of a heat. But it's those two are big ones. Kathleen says, how do you test recipes designed to have so many possible variations? When I came up with this book and was pitching it, I'm like, why don't more books have substitution lists like this? And then I was like, oh, because it is a nightmare to test. This book brought me to my knees, but it is also why I'm so proud of it, because there were so many substitutions to test. And in certain instances, like I know for a fact in a certain recipe, without needing to like physically test it, that like a bell pepper would be as delicious as a carrot. But for example, there is a really delicious couscous skillet with zucchini and chickpeas that is inspired by the flavors of Moroccan tagine, and it's super simple. It's also in the One Pot chapter, but couscous has gluten. I needed most things have a gluten-free and a dairy-free option, and so couscous absorbs a different amount of liquid than something like quinoa or rice. So those have to be tested individually. So every substitution was tested by me, but then also I have outside recipe testers testing every recipe, and they were allowed to test the recipe as written or use any of the You Do You substitutions that they like. So the testing for this book was a little bit more challenging, but I think it's that much better for it, if I'm being honest. Let's see what some people have to say. Brittany says everyone should read Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat. Completely understand. Yes. I agree with that wholeheartedly. And I think that is truly a culinary Bible if you are a newer cook. And I think what's great about You Do You is it's not offering the in-depth sort of teaching or food science, but it is providing you with the literal examples for those people who are like, great, I have this knowledge, but I'm still a little bit nervous. I need to be told exactly what is safe. And obviously there are jumping off points. There was no way for me to include every possible substitution in the universe. I just tried to give people a lot of common ideas to get juices flowing. Let's see. What's your most chaotic kitchen moment? I mean, whenever I'm recipe testing for a book, this kitchen is chaos at literally all times. But I would say probably my first Thanksgiving when I was in culinary school that I hosted, I didn't realize that one of the ovens wasn't working. And so everybody came to eat dinner at 6 and we ended up eating at midnight. It was still one of my, I think it's like my favorite Thanksgiving though. People really appreciated the food more probably because they had several bottles of wine. And I can't say my chef skills were perfect back then, but it was a blast. And that's like my biggest thing about cooking and entertaining is people vibe off the host. So even if you're feeling chaotic or you didn't pull off your best meal, as long as you're happy and having fun, people are going to just be psyched to be there. In the meantime, we've got like 1 more minute on these vegetables. I have a zucchini here. We are going to trim the ends just like this. And then I have this box grater. I am going to grate the zucchini on the large holes of the box grater. Because the zucchini is grated, it's basically just going to disappear into this bolognese. And it's not that I'm always trying to hide vegetables and things. I'm just a big proponent of vegetables. I love them. I love their flavor. But I'm also excited when they're in the mix, a lot of them. And maybe if you have picky eaters or people who are not that stoked on eating a ton of vegetables, if they're in a recipe in a way where you almost can't tell, that's always a beautiful thing. So once I get down to this little nub, that's close enough. I don't need to be grating off my fingers during this live stream. We have this pile of zucchini here that we're going to add into the mix momentarily. But on top of these veggies, I'm going to add just a little bit of garlic here and give this a quick saute just for about 30 seconds. I'm going to grab my turkey from the fridge. Gotten out before now. But we're going to add this right from the package. A pound of turkey, or again, whatever meat you wanted to use. We're going to get this right in there. And then we're going to start to stir and break this up with our spatula. Now, again, for the same people that are like, oh my gosh, she's making bolognese in one pot. If we were being super meticulous, we would brown the meat, take it out of the pan, then saute the vegetables, add it back in. In this case, again, 1 pot meal, and we're not really sacrificing much flavor. Ground turkey doesn't get quite as brown as something like a ground beef or a ground lamb would. If you have the time and energy, you are more than welcome to brown your meat separately to build a little bit more fond in the bottom of the pan. So we're just going to keep this going for another few minutes and we'll answer some questions while this meat cooks. How can picky eaters adapt recipes without making separate meals? That's a great question, Leah. I think like part of it, hopefully, is reading a recipe and thinking about how you can adapt it to the picky eater in a way that you will still enjoy. And that way, hopefully, it's still one meal. Otherwise, possibly breaking down the components. For example, if you're making one of like the dinner salads in the salad chapter in this book per se, and being like, all right, so they won't eat salmon, but they will eat chicken. Is that something that you're willing to, have 2 pans going for the protein, but you're compromising on knowing that the bulk of the meal, like that salad itself, is a crowd pleaser? I think what my go-to really is like, how can I find a meal the picky eater will like that I still enjoy so that I don't have to be making separate meals? Leah says, what's the biggest misconception about healthy cooking? I think that it's just boring and flavorless. I mean, that's my last 2 cookbooks, which were called the Dude Diet, were based on my then boyfriend, now husband's eating habits, because I think Logan had a very sort of sad 90s view of health food when we first met, which was basically that, if healthy eating meant he had to eat like spinach and tofu and Greek yogurt for the rest of his life versus eating incredibly flavorful meals with tons of produce and leaner meats and more whole grains. I also think I'm a big believer in adding as much flavor to things as humanly possible. And I think that the concept that like vegetables are not delicious is very devastating to me, but also, again, just that like healthy food lacks flavor because flavor is not inherently unhealthy. We can be adding so many spices and acid and fresh, vibrant flavors and making really delicious, healthy meals. I'm worried about you guys. I've had this iffy stovetop burner for a while. I'm nervous it's going to conk out on me tonight. Oh, so I have Sally, my right-hand woman, here with me tonight, who is helping me out with the comments in case they get out of control, which I'm struggling to actually read them from afar. But let's talk book tour. Yes, I am going on a book tour. The book comes out August 4th, and I will be touring for about like 10 days after launch, and then going back on the road in early September, just because I feel like late August is a dead zone for a lot of people. Taco sadly cannot go on the plane. Taco is not one of those dogs, which is devastating to me. But he will be if you're available to come to Bridgehampton. Taco will be at that event. But the tour schedule will be on my website later this week. So I'm adding a bunch of salt here. I got about 2.5 teaspoons of Diamond Crystal kosher salt. Let's talk kosher salt just for a moment. Diamond Crystal is my personal preference. It has a nice, clean flavor, but also it dissolves really quickly. So if you are somebody like it's hollow flakes. So if you're somebody that likes to taste your food really hot, pretty much immediately while you're cooking it, Diamond Crystal is helpful for that because salt like Morton's takes longer to dissolve. So you might taste it and be like, oh, it's not salty enough, and then add more. And honestly, the easiest way to ruin a meal is to oversalt it. Obviously, an under-seasoned meal is a crime, but we can always add more salt. We can never take away. For anybody who is just joining, we're making one pot white bolognese. If you're watching on TalkShopLive, you can click the shop link to pre-order signed copies of You Do You. If you're on Instagram or Facebook, you can comment shop for the links or just click the link in the description on YouTube. Okay, so we now have our turkey in. We're going to add about 1/2 cup of a dry white wine into the mix. We are going to let that cook off just for about a moment. We're just adding a little bit of acidity in here. If you do not want to use wine, you do you. You're going to use a little bit more broth in the mix. And if you want to lift the pasta with some acidity at the end, you can add a nice squeeze of lemon juice. I sometimes like to do that anyway, just because I love citrus. But you absolutely do not have to use wine. So we're just letting that cook off for about a moment, and then we're going to add a whole bunch of spices into the mix. Lauren says, was there a piece of feedback from recipe testing that made you laugh or cry? Okay, so there were a handful of recipes where nothing made me cry and that it was awful. I just think like the most killer feedback is when people are like, it was fine. Like that just cuts right to my soul. Like I don't want to put anything like fine in the cookbook. So if that was the case and I really loved a recipe, I would tweak it, send it to more testers, and hopefully like make sure that it had more flavor in the mix. And sometimes it was simply just like tweaking it in a way that really packed more of a flavorful punch. But sometimes a couple recipes just didn't make it into the book. Things that made me laugh, it always made me laugh when people would see photos of like their kids just like housing a recipe, or saying like they walked in on their husband like drinking the dressing like right out of the measuring cup that they had mixed it in, things like that. Always speaks to my soul. We're going to add some dried spices in here. I'm just kind of rubbing them between my fingers to wake up the essential oils in the spices, especially if you have some older dried spices. This makes all the difference, just giving them a little bit of a rub between your finger. We have dried thyme, dried rosemary, oregano, pinch of nutmeg, just a little bit like warming spice in there. It's like very subtle, but makes a huge difference. Just like a tiny bit of nutmeg in your mashed potatoes. We're going to stir this around, and then we're going to add zucchini. Where's my bench scraper? Add zucchini, and then pasta. I have campanile tonight. Any short pasta would work here, but I really love these like little ear-shaped pasta pieces, dry pasta. And I know if anybody's joining late, I know some people are deeply horrified by one-pot pastas, but can't beat convenience if the flavor and texture is still there. And then we're going to add broth and milk into the mix. So I am using just store-bought low-sodium chicken broth. If you wanted to use a homemade broth, that would be excellent, but you would want to adjust the salt levels to account for how salty your broth is. So I'm just going to add 1.5 cups of broth here. And then I'm going to add a cup of milk as well. Oh, Jasmine. I love this. Jasmine wants to know how I cook confidently while entertaining guests. And my biggest piece of advice is, first of all, if you're nervous, never test a new recipe on guests. That is just a literal recipe for disaster if you are nervous. But my biggest advice is twofold. One, when you are making your recipe, I want you to choose recipes where you really only have to worry about one, max 2 things hitting the table piping hot. I like to have one hot dish, typically the main dish, like the protein, but not always. And then round out the menu with room temperature items, things that are fantastic, like just as good, if not meant to be served at room temperature. Like I love, a roasted vegetable with a vinaigrette or herbs and toasted nuts and cheese and things like that. That is really great at room temperature. That way you can do a lot of prep in advance and not have to worry about like oven space and stovetop and managing a bunch of different things right before people sit down so that everything is hot simultaneously. Second, make a prep schedule. So I'm actually going to move this to my stovetop burner so that I have a little bit better control over the heat. I'm going to bring this up to like a vigorous simmer over medium high, and then we'll lower it to a simmer and cover it up. But prep schedule. I literally write out everything that I'm going to do, starting often the day before with something like Thanksgiving, like days before. Often the day before, I will do things like set the table, pick my playlist, choose my outfit, and then I will do every possible bit of prep that I can the day before or the morning of a party, whether that's making vinaigrettes, prepping vegetables. If you're doing something like a braised short rib, I love things that can be made in advance and actually taste better the next day. So that is always something to consider as well. I will often timestamp the prep schedule. I have tons of examples of this on my Instagram. I'm at Serena G. Wolf. I have lots of parties highlights. The prep schedule will change your life. It just helps you feel like you have everything together. And then I will do it all the way up to like the moment that guests arrive, being like, build that cheese board 20 minutes before. And then after guests arrive, I'm like, at this time, I'm going to put this in the oven, or I'm going to put this back to rewarm on the stovetop, etc. It's kind of life changing. Let's look at some other questions while we wait for this. Love your prep schedules, Liz says. Super helpful. That makes me so happy. Mary says, is there an ingredient that is extra difficult to figure out a swap for? Not necessarily. I always find, just in terms of testing this book, I don't think there's one ingredient, but grains and pastas really are tough with making substitutions, just in the sense that, like, if they're already cooked, say you're making a grain salad that has farro in it, super easy to swap in any grain for the farro. But if you're using a specific volume of liquid in a recipe with a grain, since they all absorb different amounts of liquid, it is just really hard to just like substitute on the fly without knowing that, you know, farro needs this amount of liquid versus quinoa needs this versus rice needs this, couscous needs this, etc. So I always struggle with that. Oh, only Thanksgiving. We had to, oh, I just thought about this though too. A few years ago, I decided to spatchcock my chicken on Thanksgiving morning, and I got a terrible Charlie horse and was like wet hair in my robe with the whole 16-pound turkey on the floor, just like curled in a ball when Logan, my husband, came into the kitchen and was like, "Oh my God, what's happening?" Just like raw turkey and me crying on the floor because I've never had a Charlie horse. It's truly like the worst thing in the world. Looking at some of these past questions that I missed, people, while we wait on this. What ingredient are you irrationally loyal to? Soft herbs of all kinds, but particularly chives. I truly, one of the questions that I get all the time is like, what can I use? Like, how can I use up the herbs in my fridge? And I mean, I can give specific examples, but I'm just like, put them on everything. Literally, herbs make everything better. And you don't have to be super precious about them either. Like, I put herbs in all of my salads. I put them on my eggs in the morning. I add them, like, I'll mix them with arugula before I add them into my sandwiches. They are excellent mixed into your grains. Like, sprinkle them on top of your proteins. But, like, more is more, in my opinion, on the herb front. I'm also very, if we're talking like branded ingredient, I really love Meredith dairy sheep and goat cheese. Die hard fan. I'm turning my heat down now so that it's just like at more of a gentle simmer. We don't want the milk to split here, so we don't want to bring it to a true boil, just a vigorous simmer. It looks like soup at this point. I will give you a small visual without, it would be very typical of me to dump this whole pot out on a live, but you can see there's a lot of liquid in this pan. It looks like a sort of tomato soup. That is not what we are going for. We just want a gentle simmer here. I'm going to cover this up. We are going to give this a stir every like 3-ish minutes just to make sure that things are cooking evenly and nothing is sticking to the bottom. Just a reminder, if you would like to pre-order signed copies of You Do You, they will be sent out on publication day. And you're watching Talk Shop Live, you can click the shop button. If you're on Instagram or Facebook, you can comment shop to have the link sent to you. And if you're on YouTube, you can click the link in the description. Let's grate some parm while we continue to answer some questions. Can I share the chapters of the book? Oh, Karen says her least favorite things. Garlic, which is jarred garlic. I know that some people need to use it for a variety of reasons, but that is very true. I don't love it. And gin. And also mayonnaise. I hate mayonnaise. Lisa asked if I can share the chapters of the book. Yes, I'll run through them quickly again. They're Breakfast Forever is breakfast, obviously, crowd pleasing, comfort food, which is a mix of all things that are when you're in need of a little like extra TLC. One Pan Wonders, that's where this one pot white bolognese came from. Signature salads, all meal salads with different protein options. Feeling Fancy, which is like more for date nights, entertaining, or just when you're feeling fancy. Some of them are actually the quickest recipes in the book, which is ironic. Show-stopping sides, mix and match sides for different seasons. And then Happy Hour, which is cocktails and appetizers, and Something Sweet, which is a very short dessert chapter. Then I'm just looking up here. Casey says, where do you get inspiration for your recipe ideas? Somehow after all these years, you're still coming out with new things that feel fresh and inventive. Thank you, Casey. That's incredibly generous of you to say. And I feel like I definitely go through phases where I'm like, especially after I finished this book, I was like, how will I ever come up with a new recipe again? I keep a running list on my phone. I get ideas from travel, when I eat in restaurants. I'm just talking to friends who are also really enthusiastic about cooking, and they'll be like, I made this like random thing, and I'll be like, oh, that's an interesting flavor profile. Maybe I'll play with that. Sometimes people will just have requests for certain techniques, and that will get an idea brewing, like being like, I really want to, get better at like cooking fish that isn't salmon. And I'll be like, okay. So in this book, we've got a really amazing, so in the one pan chapter, there's a sheet pan halibut Dijonnaise that has like it does have a little bit of mayo in it, but you can always substitute Greek yogurt. Or make it, there's a dairy-free version too, but it's halibut fillets that you cook on a sheet pan with broccoli and green beans, and then you make a Dijonnaise which is essentially like a, honey mustard, it's Dijon and mayonnaise and herbs and a little bit of lemon juice. It goes on the fish, but then once everything goes under the broiler, once the fish is flaky and the vegetables are like tender and a little bit charred, you toss the vegetables with the remaining dressing, and then you add some like dried cranberries and nuts, and you have this like really incredible meal in about 25 minutes. You only dirty one pan. It feels really fancy, and you've learned how to broil fish, which is one of my go-to ways to cook a simple fillet of fish. So yeah, sometimes it's the technique or the ingredient that motivates me to come up with a new recipe as well. Brooke says, yes, I did pick a Vitamix winner. It was announced in the caption of the post. Jeanette, I recognize that screen name. She said, you mean you're not running around like a crazy person right before guests come fighting for your life? I need to make a schedule. I will say, even with the prep schedule, there's usually something that I'm behind on. And again, people vibe off the host. If you're relaxed and having fun, everybody's going to have a great time. I feel like the dinner parties I've hated the most are the one where the host like is apologize, like being like, I'm sorry, the chicken's so dry, or like you get there and she's like, I'm so behind on everything. And because then you're like, oh God, and you're like, can I help? And then I actually don't like it when people help me, because needless to say, I'm on a schedule. People I actually don't find it particularly helpful. And I'm always like, no, I'm fine, but let me get you a drink. And like, we're not panicking. Even if you can be internally panicking, we just got to project that calm to the world. Am I missing? Sally's reading the comments better than I am. Okay, I think we're doing okay. Oh, wait, this is a great one. Mary said, how do you handle guests hovering in the kitchen asking for help? It's up to you, but I always like offer to make them a drink, and then I'm like, start chatting with them to distract them. And I'm like, I've got everything under control. Don't worry about it. If for example, I have certain friends and family members who like insist on helping, and I'm like, oh dear God, I have certain family members, I literally think ahead, and I'm like, what task can I give them that I know that this sounds terrible, that I'm like, that I know that they will execute to my liking, will not actually interfere with the process. And I like set that aside for them. I'm like, you can slice the Brussels sprouts. Like I could have easily done that before they got there, but I know they're going to need a task. So having that on hand is very helpful. I have some parm here. Always, if you can, it's cheaper to buy wedges of parm than the pre-grated stuff. And you can see as I'm grating here, I'm getting a pile of very fluffy cheese. The freshly grated stuff is going to be nice and fluffy like this. It's usually higher quality cheese at a lower price point. But see this pillowy, snowy bunch of parm? Say I were making meatballs or a meatloaf. It is going to help the meatballs stay nice and aerated and fluffy and tender, versus if you use the pre-grated parm, which like totally fine to use at a pinch, but it has that more sandy texture. And so it will actually yield a more dense final product, which is not great. And again, it's more expensive to buy the pre-grated stuff, usually for a lesser quality product. And then you get to have a parm rind when you're done with this, and you can throw into soup, stews, sauces, things like that. So I'm going to let this go. I'm going to stir it like probably once more and let this go until the pasta itself is al dente. Al dente means that it just has a little bit of bite left to it. We don't want it to be mushy at all. And then we will turn off the heat, and we're going to finish it with a little bit of cream, not a ton, just about a quarter cup, and then add the parm. Now, if you wanted a little bit more of like a kick, a more bite from the cheese, you could use a pecorino romano. If you want to use half and half instead of heavy cream and have it be a little bit lighter, that is totally fine. To make this dairy free, I love to use just like an unsweetened plant-based milk and creamer. Coconut milk works well too, as long as it's unsweetened. Like a full fat coconut milk will still give you like a nice creamy pasta, and you can always use vegetable broth to keep it vegetarian as well. Oh, somebody said if you do you. I am so excited because I would have forgotten to talk about this aspect of the book, which is not something that is advertised because it's not the purpose of the book. But I personally love to entertain, and I know that a lot of people in my online communities are very strong entertainers. So if you do you were a dinner party theme, what would be on the menu? I have purposely included in the book like a seasonal cocktail and appetizer. Like there in the happy hour chapter, is at least one cocktail and appetizer that is for each season. And then there are mains again that are seasonal with mix and match sides. I will share the possible mix and match dinner party menus on my Instagram like over the coming months, because I personally plan to make like at least several of the summer menus. But I would say, I think what's great about it, like for summer, whenever I throw a dinner party in the summer, I usually do some sort of mixed grill. So there's a balsamic mixed grill in the Feeling Fancy chapter that is chicken. You can do chicken thighs or chicken breasts, skirt steak or alternative steaks, and then shrimp. And you can do all one protein. You can mix and match until you have like about 3 pounds of protein. You marinate them in this like really simple but very flavor packed balsamic marinade, and then you grill them, and then you have this crowd pleasing dinner for everyone. You got your pescatarians in there. You just have to worry about the vegetarians, but you can bulk out the meal with some incredible sides. And then my hope is that you'll start to look at these recipes in the sides chapter. There's a charred zucchini with like a pepperoncini gremolata that's really delicious. Can take the balsamic mixed grill. Sometimes I like to melt a little cheese on top, add a little tomato sauce, like a grilled chicken parm, and then put the gremolata on top. There's also chicken parm burgers in the comfort food chapter, and you could put the gremolata from the zucchini on top of those. So there's tons of there's tons of sauces and dressings in the mix that are really mix, and sauces, dressings, and like condiments. There is also what I think is a very helpful addition to the index. So it's kind of an at a glance, and it's just basically how to cook, and then it's divided by like eggs, protein, or eggs, meat, fish, grains, and it'll be like pan-sear fish, cook fish in parchment, poach fish, how to cook a jammy egg, how to make an omelet, how to make a frittata, how to make like pan-seared chicken, how to make braised chicken, like all of these that you can just go to that one page and be like, I want to figure out how to do this one thing because I have this thing in my fridge. And then you can figure out if you want to make the actual recipe associated with it, or just take that technique and run with it. Chicken parm burgers are going to be my husband's most requested. I already know. That makes me so happy, Suze. Does anybody have any like specific questions about like dietary restrictions or anything like that? I think we covered most of that stuff. I'm just gonna see. We need like 2 more minutes, and then we'll be able to finish this up. You guys, I also have an exciting announcement for you. Wendy says, I already pre-ordered the new cookbook. Very excited for it to just show up soon. Thank you so much. I've been so grateful for the support. And the great thing about pre-ordering, I know it can be frustrating for others to be like, buy this thing that doesn't exist yet. But hopefully, if you've been with me throughout these, past 50 minutes, you have a good sense of what the book is. And then if you do pre-order, it's so incredible for authors. I can't even stress to you how important it is, from like to the publisher to where it gets placed in stores, all of those things. But also, if you order it now, you'll probably like forget exactly when it comes out, and it will just show up as a fun surprise pleasant. Cannot speak tonight. Surprise present. That was a tongue twister. Haley says I was late to the game, but I know that you've mentioned lots of gluten-free options. Yes, I would say a lot, like probably 50% of the book is naturally gluten-free, but I feel confident saying that 95% of the recipes, if not all of them, can be adapted to be gluten-free. There might be like 2 that where they're very flexible, but they really do need a glutinous element. But I honestly don't even know if that's the case. I will double check, but it's very gluten-free friendly, also very dairy-free friendly, also very plant-based friendly, honestly. Haley has never pre-ordered a cookbook in my life until now. Thank you so much, Haley. Ashley says, I really struggle substituting whole milk for a milk alternative so that it doesn't have an off taste and actually mimics that same flavoring. Do you have tips for that or something that you've learned? I would say, honestly, I know this is super annoying, but sometimes it's just experimenting with finding the right dairy-free alternative. I do find that some like almond milks, especially, I don't want to like name names, but some brands are like very watery, and do have sort of a little bit of a synthetic taste. You guys, we have reached al dente. So sorry, I just knocked on the Dutch oven and have alerted my dog in the back. But some like Elmhurst has a very creamy cashew milk and almond milk that I find doesn't have a strong aftertaste. And as long as you do not boil it, like you don't get it too hot, it should mimic the same texture. I know it's annoying to say try different brands, but I'm going to blank on the specific name of the coconut milk brand. There's one that is just like not sweet and also cooks really well. I'll find it and DM me. I'll find it for you. You are your best salesperson. Keep talking about it. Thank you. I really do often as an author, and I think anybody who creates anything can relate to this struggle. You're like, I want to keep hammering people with this, but in a book event, I assume you're interested in the book itself, but nobody is going to be as excited about something that you've made or be able to promote it better than you are. So we got to shout it loud and proud from the rooftops. Hi, Justin. Thank you. Sarah says, what did I miss? My husband and I are so excited for your next cookbook. Thank you so much. Your books are most used by far. That's truly the best compliment that somebody could give, because I feel like there are just so many incredible cookbooks just floating around in the world. So to be at the top of anyone's list is the greatest of honors. Ashley says that's good to know. Yeah, the milk thing is really tricky and frustrating. All right, we've got the cream in here, and you'll notice we're off the heat. We want to make sure that this does not separate at all. My cream was pretty close to room temperature anyway. And then I've also got that parm in there. We're going to taste this and adjust the seasoning. So we might need a little bit more salt. And we're also going to add some black pepper into the mix, because freshly ground black pepper, like great to cook in things too, but I love when you get that like right at the end. I'm going to put some directly on my bowl of pasta as well. I'm going to give this a little taste. Can she do an on-camera bite and also not burn her mouth here? We shall see. No. Okay. Salt. Don't be afraid of salt. I always try to pinpoint a crowd-pleasing amount of salt in a recipe. But salt, the power of salt is wild. I always use the example of mashed potatoes. If you've ever taken a bite of unseasoned mashed potato, it tastes terrible. And then you keep adding salt and you're like, this is the most delicious thing in the world. So sometimes you just got to add a little bit more salt until the flavors pop. I'm going to show you. I can't do what I usually do, which is to like flip my camera around and be able to show you what the interior of the pot looks like. But surprise of all surprise, I eat 99% of my meals out of shallow bowls. There is a little bit of free-floating liquid in this pasta because it continues to thicken as it cools. So you want it to be a little bit saucier when you go to plate than you want it to be when you're going to eat it because, like I said, it is going to thicken up. So, should I also know any tips you have to avoid the sauce from breaking? Okay, so a couple, it depends what it's being caused by. A very big, obvious one is, especially if there's cream in it, you don't want to boil it. You also don't want to add like super cold, well, it depends. It depends. Boiling cream is an easy way to make sauces split. Also, when you add things too quickly, so say you're making a pan sauce, often at the end you want to add cold butter so that it's melting more slowly, and you want to add it a little bit at a time so that you can allow it to be slowly melting and getting really nice and glossy. Versus if you add warm butter, the fat is just gonna like, you add a whole bunch of warm butter at once and you're like whisking it, it's just gonna melt, and that fat is gonna not emulsify easily with whatever the other ingredients in your sauce are. So sadly, it kind of does depend on the type of sauce. But I would be very careful with boiling dairy, and then also when you're making pan sauces and adding your butter, make sure it's cold and being added slowly. Also, taking that like extra second to clean up your plate when you're plating is a big deal. I am going to add a little bit more parm here because more is more. And now is the exciting part. If you are still here, thank you for sticking with me. We are wrapping up. One last call that if you joined and didn't hear me say this, and you would like to pre-order signed copies of the book, right now TalkShopLive is the only place that you can get signed copies. You will also be able to order signed copies through TalkShop after this live and watch this replay whenever you'd like. If you just joined and want to see what happened earlier. So you can click the shop button on TalkShop. If you're on Facebook or Instagram, comment shop. You'll have the link sent to you, or on YouTube, you can click the link in the description. For those of you who are still here, we have a huge giveaway. So Maiden, which is my favorite cookware brand, is the brand of the Dutch oven that I was using this evening, is giving away a 13-piece kitchen set to one of you. It's basically everything that I have in my kitchen that I use constantly. And Sally has picked a winner for us. Who is it, Sally? Kathleen, are you still here? Who is talking to us through TalkShopLive? Kathleen, you asked a lot of good questions. Are you still here? Maybe not. We have to have our winners. So we'll give Kathleen like just in case she's walked away from her screen. Otherwise, we gotta pick another winner because I have to be able to chat with you now so that we can get that out to you. In the meantime, glamour shot. I'm gonna try and angle this down slightly. Can you see? It's not the most beautiful because it's a white dish. Oh, for my Instagram friends, but it is extremely delicious. And again, can easily be made gluten-free, dairy-free, made with any type of meat that you'd like. If you are not into zucchini, spinach is great in here. You can leave out green vegetable. Peas are also awesome. This can also be made with sausage if you'd like. Okay, we need a new winner. Sally. Mary G, are you still here? Mary G. TalkShopLive attendee, Mary G. Oh, wow. Everybody pieced out when they knew the recipe was over. I respect that. Mary G! Yay! You won the 13-piece Maiden Kitchen set. Will you type your first and last name into the chat if you feel comfortable, and then email info@domesticate-me.com. Anybody else? You're welcome to email me there too, but we know that your name is not Mary, so you won't be able to snag the Maiden. I feel like I have to take her. So even just since this was plated, the sauce has thickened up beautifully and it's like coating things really nicely. Mm. And again, I'm not gonna lie, because I am you just saw me throw that paper towel. It's now on the floor. I'm gonna add a little squeeze of lemon too. You could add some lemon zest into the mix if you like that as well. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Again, you can get signed copies through TalkShop until the book comes out. I hope to see some of you on tour. Mary Gleason is her name. Mary, we correspond. I know Mary Gleason. Thank you all for being here tonight. It was fantastic to spend your time with you. I can't tell you how happy it made me to have some familiar names in here, and thank you for all your wonderful questions. I am always very, very flattered when people come out, and I hope you love this book. Please stay in touch. I'm at Serena G. Wolf on Instagram. I hope to see many pictures of your creations, and I look forward to seeing how you make these recipes your own. So thank you all very much for being here. I will see you soon. I'm now panicking because I can't remember if I'm supposed to end the Instagram live first or the TalkShopLive first. It's a miracle we made it through this tonight without any huge technical glitches. I end Instagram first. All right. Instagram people, thank you for being here. You are the best. I'm going to end this live video. All right. I think I did that correctly. Good night, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your evening. I will see you soon. Hold on. It takes a while. I think it takes a while to close out.